Defining dementia. Introduction to Module. The condition of dementia has become more routinely covered by the media over recent years. As a result, some misconceptions exist, and many people have become fearful of developing symptoms associated with it. The potential for losing memories and cognitive abilities is upsetting, and there is an element of social stigma associated with so-called senility. But dementia is essentially a form of a degenerative disorder and may affect each person differently. This introductory module looks at the fundamental causes and symptoms of dementia in its various forms. Learning objectives. By the end of this module, you should be able to understand dementia and recognize dementia as a syndrome. Underline the aging process and dementia. Underline different parts of the brain, notably the cerebrum, frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, occipital lobe, cerebellum. Understanding dementia. The word dementia is used to describe a group of conditions and symptoms that affects memory, reasoning, and social engagement, to the extent that it can severely disrupt a person's life. It is not a single disease as such, although some diseases will cause dementia. Although frequently associated with aging, it is not an inevitable part of that biological process. It remains poorly understood due to social stigmas associated with mental illness and the brain's functionality. In medical terms, having dementia will mean that the following cognitive abilities will gradually deteriorate in effectiveness. 1. Thinking and reasoning. 2. Language recognition and formulation. 3. Memory recall. 4. Judgment and perception. Dementia is not simply caused by a person growing old and starting to forget things, as many people still think. It is essentially a disorder that affects the brain in significant ways that are noticeable to others. It most commonly involves varying degrees of memory loss. However, memory loss can be caused by different issues, and having a poor memory does not mean that a person will develop dementia in later years. Early symptoms of dementia are likely to be associated with recollection, but other mental problems will soon become apparent, including being unable to perform daily routines, having difficulty communicating with others, displaying mood swings and personality changes. Recognizing dementia as a syndrome. Because dementia is not a singular disease, it is more widely recognized as a syndrome. This indicates that it is essentially a progressive deterioration in cognitive abilities that can be caused by brain disease or comparable conditions. To underline this further, the term heart disease is commonly used to describe various ailments that affect the performance of the human heart, but it's not a single disease by any means. Other brain functions that can be typically affected include spatial awareness, overall comprehension, calculating methods, learning capacity, language recognition, judgmental abilities, information processing. Dementia symptoms. An individual with dementia is likely to exhibit the following symptoms: unable to recall recent events or details from them, misplacing objects frequently, failing to recognize familiar people, places, or objects, problems communicating, unable to concentrate, difficulty learning new abilities, repeating the same question to the same person, lack of awareness of time passing, poor risk assessment, showing immediate fatigue after physical activity, rapid mood swings, uncharacteristic behavior in social situations. It is important to consider that all of these symptoms may be caused by conditions that are not associated with dementia, so a professional medical diagnosis should be sought before assumptions are made. The aging process and dementia. The human aging process is surprisingly still a relatively poorly understood concept in some respects. Compared to earlier historical periods, the average life expectancy of a person has increased by many years. In the UK, it currently sits around 81 years. This has been achieved with advancements in medical knowledge, habitation, and sanitation. In fact, many ailments that were considered to be a natural part of aging, such as heart disease, are now eminently curable and can be actively prevented with treatment and healthy behavior. This suggests that some conditions attributed to aging may be treatable and preventable in the near future, with life expectancies increasing even further. Rather than simply group together all progressive conditions that older people will commonly encounter and qualify them with the same levels of medical diagnosis, practitioners and medical professionals now use such specific terms as benign senescent forgetfulness, age-associated cognitive deficits, age-related macular degeneration. This differentiates some conditions from being the result of changes caused by disease, as opposed to organs or senses becoming affected by changes due to normal healthy aging. In simple terms, it separates the natural from the unnatural, i.e. external sources or diseases. A human being gathers knowledge and practical skills by experiencing and processing cognitive activities. This is a natural form of learning that is often called fluid intelligence. Fluid intelligence allows someone to solve problems that they have never encountered before, using honed abilities of comprehension, judgment, and decision-making. This is a process that will become less effective and usable as a person naturally ages. This may be partly due to short-term memory problems but is not the same as memory loss from dementia. A naturally aged person will forget segments of a memory and may struggle to recall specific parts of an event. However, a person with dementia is more likely to have the entire memory of an event simply vanish from their mind. To provide an example, two people may go to a cinema and watch a feature film. One person will later forget how the film ends or the leading character's name. However, the person with dementia may entirely forget that they have even seen the film. There is no clear or definable point as to where symptoms of natural aging can switch to being diagnosed as a cognitive disease or condition. It will require sustained examination and often involve opinions from more than one medical practitioner. However, it is more likely that an age-related condition will very gradually manifest over a prolonged length of time, perhaps even decades. In contrast, a disease or disorder may start to significantly affect standards of living within months or a couple of years. This may be more visible if they continue to function within a group of similarly aged people that do not display the same symptoms. How dementia affects human brain. The human brain is one of the most complex and remarkable structures in nature. It is the center of all nervous systems, monitors health, controls our actions, stores our experiences, etc. This is why dementia has such a profound effect on a person when it develops in a person and damages brain cells. When dementia manifests in the brain, nerve cells in different areas of the brain will become irreversibly damaged and eventually die. Now let's explore different parts of the human brain. The cerebrum. The cerebrum is the largest part of the brain, consisting of cerebral hemispheres, an outer layer called the cortex, gray matter, and the inner layer, white matter. It is associated with higher-order functioning, as well as controlling aspects of attention, consciousness, language, and memory. It consists of condensed gray and white matter, wrinkled in the way that gives the brain its distinctive look. In some respects, it can be compared to a bundle of optic or electrical wires that transports information rather than power. As a whole, the cerebrum can be extensively affected by dementia of Lewy bodies, DLB. Deposits of protein build up in the gray matter, causing tiny round lumps to harm and interfere with the functioning of neurons. This can cause vivid hallucinations and unexpected losses of consciousness. Another form of dementia that may center on this area is vascular dementia, which may cause severe disruption to localized blood flow. If this happens, nerves in the cerebrum will not get enough oxygen or nutrition and start to die. The cerebral cortex, being the outer layer, contains 4 lobes or regions, each of which is susceptible to forms of dementia. The frontal lobe. The frontal lobe of the brain specifically controls a person's behavior, personality, emotions. It also provides a sense of morality, or right and wrong, for decision-making and the potential consequences of actions that can be taken. As such, it prevents a person from being dangerously impulsive and committing to socially unacceptable interactions with others. The lobe is also thought to be responsible for storing and ordering long-term memories. Damage to the frontal lobe can come from frontotemporal dementia, also known as FTD. There are different forms of FTD, and if a person develops one, it can affect them in sudden and unexpected ways. If it significantly damages nerve cells in this region at a relatively early stage, it can result in drastic changes in personality or behavior for no apparent reason unless dementia is diagnosed accordingly. Like DLB and Alzheimer's, FTD can damage or destroy nerve cells due to protein deposits interfering with their functionality. The parietal lobe. The parietal lobe is responsible for ordering things, such as letters when reading, numbers when calculating, and items when shopping. It also takes charge of the body sense, being able to control spatial awareness and the manipulation of external forces. This is essential for a person to be aware of the position of their arms and legs or how they need to be moved to perform a function. Even simple actions such as taking a few steps or picking up a cup need this function to be in good condition to succeed. This area of the brain can be susceptible to Alzheimer's disease, particularly a variant that can cause posterior cortical atrophy. This is another form of damage caused by protein deposits, but if it damages cells in the parietal lobe, it will mean that an individual will have tremendous difficulty in judging distances and being able to manipulate objects in any significant way. Damage in this area will also lead to problems with calculations, recognizing objects, and even reacting to the appearance of people who should be familiar to them. Over a period of time, memory and thinking abilities will progressively deteriorate. The temporal lobe. The temporal lobe is primarily responsible for controlling the ability to understand, mainly in regard to a person's surroundings and circumstances. It allows a person to store a snapshot of a scene, a face, an object, or any relevant details that familiarize themselves with an environment. Resident within the temporal lobe is the hippocampus, a complex little structure that makes new memories and allows a person to recall details of a past experience with relevant accuracy. The temporal lobe, and particularly the hippocampus, can be severely damaged by the onset of Alzheimer's disease. With this condition, two forms of protein, amyloid and tau, are liable to damage cells in the hippocampus and spread outwards progressively. This is what usually causes the early symptoms of Alzheimer's, where memory loss and the ability to recall details from a recent event start to become confused and unreliable. It can also lead to language and descriptive words being forgotten during an act of communication. The occipital lobe. The occipital lobe has the responsibility for interpreting the information that the eyes send to the brain. It translates electrical impulses from them into recognized colors, movements, and shapes. It even controls the visual aspects of dreams. This can also be affected by Alzheimer's and the resultant brain cell damage. The more damaged cells in this area, the more problems a person will have in seeing things or being able to interpret what they are and what their purpose is. The cerebellum. The cerebellum, little brain in Latin, is the walnut-shaped structure of the hindbrain that can be found near the brainstem. It is primarily associated with controlling physical movements, especially when it involves balance or posture. It also contributes to attentiveness and communication. It can also be susceptible to cell damage from Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. If it becomes significantly damaged, it will lead to a person displaying slow or uncoordinated movements, staggering or swaying tendencies, unable to judge distances or stop suddenly, body tremors, slurred speech. Summary. Dementia is used to describe a group of conditions and symptoms that affects memory, reasoning, and social engagement. A person with dementia tends to forget an entire experience, whereas a typical older person will only forget parts of an experience. Symptoms of dementia include poor concentration, excessive fatigue, confusion about time and date, memory loss, etc. Dementia may start to significantly affect living standards within months or a couple of years. When dementia manifests in the brain, nerve cells in different areas of the brain will become irreversibly damaged and eventually die. Congratulations! You have successfully completed the module. Thank you. Happy learning!